Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, what Trump's firing of a Federal Reserve governor means for his influence on the Fed, plus some tips and tricks for flying internationally with pets, and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are engaged. President Donald Trump yesterday announced he was firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. That marks an unprecedented move that brings him one step closer to shaping the balance of the Fed's 7-member board in his favor. I spoke with USA Today White House correspondent Bart Jansen for more. Bart, thanks for hopping back on, sir.
Thanks for having me.
So just starting here, who is Lisa Cook and why did President Trump say he's firing her?
Trump said in a letter that went out on Monday that Lisa Cook no longer has the confidence of the American public because she's been accused of mortgage fraud. She hasn't had a chance to formally respond to that accusation. She has not been charged criminally, but Trump said it looked bad, that it was potentially criminal. And so he said she no longer had his confidence and that he needed to fire her to find somebody better for the job.
Bart, how does this move fit into Trump's broader tensions with the Federal Reserve? And I guess what does it mean practically now for the Fed and his influence over it?
Well, he's been arguing that the Fed should be lowering interest rates, which is generally thought to spur the economy. And he has criticized the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, repeatedly, saying that he's too late, he's too slow, he should be lowering these rates faster. And the balancing that the Fed does is they don't want to lower rates to a degree that then inflation gets reignited. And so the Fed is constantly in this balancing act between how high should interest rates be and how much inflation can we stand. And on the flip side, if you choke off economic growth, then how much of a recession or a loss of jobs might you risk? So this accusation against Cook is that if Trump can remove her, then he could potentially get somebody more closely aligned with his priorities. The crux of the dispute, however, is that the president is not supposed to remove Fed officials for policy reasons. He's supposed to remove them over cause. And cause basically means a good reason, a legal reason. That was something that Congress inserted when it created the Fed in 1913 through legislation. And so the question, as Cook fights this removal, and her lawyer, Abby Lowell, has threatened a lawsuit over her removal, is what cause is going to mean. Because Trump basically has argued she's been accused of a crime, and so she no longer has my confidence, and so I can fire her as the chief of the executive branch. But cause traditionally means that you were doing something wrong in the job. So she's accused of declaring homes in both Michigan and Georgia as her primary residence. Trump says clearly that can't be true. It's one or the other. And so she can't have his confidence. Traditionally, an accusation about cause would be that she did something bad at the Fed, that she did something wrong in setting interest rates or determining how the rate should be set. And that's not the accusation here. So we expect that as she files a lawsuit, that the definition of cause will be what's fought over, and the Supreme Court will eventually have to probably rule on this and just say, how much can the president do to alter the membership of the Fed?
You mentioned the lawsuit, Bart. Is that where we go next in terms of just how Cook is pushing back?
Yes, Cook has vowed to fight this removal. Her lawyer has threatened a lawsuit. It is expected to go through the federal courts. Now, what's ominous for her so far is that the Supreme Court has refused to block Trump's firings of tens of thousands of federal workers, including the heads of other independent agencies. And there was thought that when these agencies were created, such as the National Labor Relations Board or the Office of Special Counsel, that these were supposed to be independent members appointed to a certain number of years to serve on those agencies so that they would be removed from politics, removed from these disputes over policy. Now, the Supreme Court has refused in numerous lawsuits to block Trump's removal of these people. Basically, it gave Trump the green light to remove these folks. Now, that was just for the temporary requests to block those removals while those cases are litigated. They are still being litigated. And so we don't have final answers on whether the president has the authority to fire people in those other panels. But for right now, they are out, and we're waiting to see what the ultimate decision was. The Supreme Court, however, said the Fed is a different character altogether, that the Fed, because of how it was created statutorily by Congress, that its members were protected from a president removing them for other than cause. That sort of teed up where this dispute is. Does Trump have a good enough cause to fire Lisa Cook? He argues that he does, and she is expected to argue in a federal lawsuit that he does not.
Bart Jansen covers the White House for USA Today. I appreciate the time as always, sir.
Thanks for having me.
President Trump announced yesterday that anyone who kills a person in the nation's capital will be charged with the death penalty. Trump was talking about reducing crime in Washington at his cabinet meeting when he pivoted and said, if somebody kills somebody in the capital, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty. Trump made restoring the death penalty a major campaign issue last fall, and his Attorney General Pam Bondi has been pursuing more use of it in federal prosecutions. Many of his supporters rallied around the comments, with Republican Senator Tom Cotton saying that the death penalty is the just response to the most heinous of crimes. Critics slammed Trump's comments, including Death Penalty Action co-founder Abraham Bonowitz, who said that President Trump knows the federal death penalty exists for certain crimes, and he should know that the people of Washington, D.C. rejected capital punishment by referendum several decades ago. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. Trump's doubling of tariffs on goods from India to as much as 50% took effect earlier today, as expected. A punitive 25% tariff imposed due to India's purchases of Russian oil adds to Trump's prior 25% tariff on a number of products from India. Those affected range from garments to furniture and chemicals. An Indian Commerce Ministry official speaking on condition of anonymity to Reuters said exporters hit by tariffs would receive financial assistance and be encouraged to diversify to markets including China, Latin America, and the Middle East. Flying internationally with pets can be tricky, but less so if you're prepared. USA Today consumer travel reporter Zach Wichter took a closer look in his cruising altitude column this week. Zach, thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
So just starting here, would you tell us about your experience visiting this ARC facility at JFK, and what is this?
So the ARC at JFK is an animal customs facility. It's a place where pets and other animals that are coming into the U.S. from abroad or leaving the U.S. to other countries can be processed for customs purposes. So when I was there were some horses that were getting ready for export. They deal sometimes with lab animals that are coming in. So they really deal with most living cargo that comes through JFK.
So let's run through some of the factors, Zach, to consider before flying with a pet across borders, as you do in this column. First off, what kind of paperwork do folks need? We don't often think of paperwork with our pets, but this is really important here, right?
Definitely. And it's going to depend on exactly where you're going and where you're coming from. So let's say you're coming into the US and your origin country is going to play a big role in determining what's needed. The US recognizes some health authorities and has agreements with some health authorities in other countries that are stronger or have a more consistent track record when it comes to animal health and safety. In general, you're going to need vaccination records that are endorsed by the authority recognized by the country that you're traveling to.
All right, so does your pet need to quarantine if you're flying internationally, Zach? I know that quarantine word can be a little bit unsettling for some.
That's one of the reasons that having your paperwork in order is really important, because if you have the appropriate vaccines and other documents that are required, your pet should not have to quarantine. That's usually a measure of last resort for pets. That said, if you are traveling in sort of an emergency situation, or unexpectedly and haven't had time to get your paperwork in order, it is possible that your pet will have to quarantine. Assuming that's not the case, though, typically pets are able to be processed within a matter of hours. Their documents are verified, they're given any updated booster vaccines that may be required, and then they're free to go on their way.
Okay, and how do some of these regulations compare for service animals or pets who can be in the cabin with you?
Recently, the regulations for service animals and in-cabin pets have gotten tighter, especially depending on the country of origin again. And so, for the most part, in-cabin pets and cargo pets will have to go through the same process. For service animals, they also have to go through the same intake process when they're coming into the US, but those reviews of their documents and their intake exams are typically expedited because the government and the facilities that process them recognize that a person who relies on a service animal would struggle to be separated from that animal for an extended period of time.
All right. Well, I mean, I'll admit I have a dog with a lot of anxiety, especially separation anxiety. So this got me thinking, like, how can folks keep their pet not just safe, but also comfortable, right, when they fly internationally in this way, Zach?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the people who I spoke to at the ARC told me that the most important thing you can really do is make sure that your pet is familiar with the crate or whatever you're shipping them in, especially if they're not going to be able to travel in the cabin with you. It's going to be really important just to make sure that that's an environment that they're comfortable in. And then also, they said, as a pet owner, feeling reassured that it is a safe process. These kinds of shipments of pets, if they're traveling as cargo, happen all the time. And the people who handle them know what they're doing and it's safe. And so if you go in calm, your pet will kind of see that from you, and that will help your pet stay calm as well.
Well, listeners might be picturing dogs or cats as we're talking, Zach, but do these guidelines differ at all for other types of animals?
Oh, yeah. So the guidelines themselves can be a little bit different depending on the type of animal. In fact, even if you have a cat versus a dog, the regulations are less strict for cats than they are for dogs. And so it's really important, if you're traveling with any kind of animal, to familiarize yourself with the specific regulations of the country that you're going to, and also of how those regulations relate to the kind of animal you're traveling with.
Zach Wichter covers consumer travel and writes the weekly cruising altitude column for USA Today. We have a link to that in today's show notes. Thank you, Zach.
Great. Thanks very much.
It's a love story, and Taylor Swift said yes. The pop star and football star Travis Kelce are engaged. They shared a joint post on Instagram yesterday afternoon, joking that your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married. A real-life rom-com played out on the football field and concert stops after Kelce went to Swift's Eras Tour in Kansas City in 2023 with a friendship bracelet that he couldn't get to the singer. Kelce said to his brother Jason on their New Heights podcast at the time that he was disappointed she doesn't talk before or after her shows because she has to save her voice for the 44 songs that she sings. Swift reached out to him afterwards, and the two began dating quietly until they went public when Swift attended the Bears vs. Chiefs game in September of 2023. The rest is history. You can read more of our dedicated Taylor Swift reporter Brian West's coverage on usatoday.com. Later today, what does it mean to be cool? We all think we know it when we see it, but scholars have struggled to pin it down.
Defining coolness is really tricky. A lot of people have tried. In one of my papers, I looked at all the different definitions and found over 70 of them just from scholars. That's not even counting the Urban Dictionary. But the one thing that most people agree on is that what makes something or someone cool is in the eye of the beholder.
University of Arizona's Caleb Warren co-authored a new global study on cool people, and he joins my colleague Dana Taylor to explain what traits cross cultures to define it. That's today, beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on this feed. And thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And as always, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.